In the frosted stillness of a quiet Montana morning, the pine trees stood like sentinels, their branches heavy with the chill. The sky had just begun to soften with light when Carolyn Hayes, wrapped tightly in her old wool coat, stepped outside. She walked the fence line like she had every morning since retiring from her long years teaching elementary school. It was a quiet ritual, comforting in its routine. But this morning, something pulled her to a stop. A bay, faint sound barely louder than the whisper of wind through pine needles, caught her attention. It was a soft, trembling whimper. Curious, she moved slowly toward the sound, and there, nestled beneath the shadow of a low cedar, she saw him. A tiny German shepherd pup, soaked through and covered in clumps of mud, was curled into a pitiful ball. He couldn't have been more than 10 weeks. Old? His ribs pushed gently against his sides, and a faint scrape across his forehead hinted at a journey that hadn't been kind. He didn't growl or flinch. Instead, when Carolyn crouched nearby, the puppy lifted his head, his amber eyes locking, with hers full of trust and confusion. "No collar," Carolyn whispered, gently brushing his neck. "Where on earth did you come from, little one?" As she carefully scooped him into her arms, he let out a long, tired sigh. Not a whimper of fear, just surrender. She wrapped him in the warmth of her fleece, cradling him close as she made her way back toward the house. Inside, she glanced at the kitchen calendar. Her daughter-in-law, Emma, was due to give birth soon any day now. Carolyn looked down at the trembling bundle in her arms and murmured, "Well, looks like we've both got someone new to care for." She named him Ranger. There was something quiet and steady about him, something that made her think of strength that didn't need to be loud. Over the days that followed, Carolyn tended to him gently. She bathed him with warm water, fed him small, nourishing meals, and laid soft blankets near the fireplace where he could sleep. He healed quickly. But it wasn't just his body that came back to life, it was something else. Something deeper. Ranger wasn't like any puppy she'd ever raised. He didn't nip at furniture or bark at shadows. He didn't need to be told twice. Instead, he followed quietly, his gaze always resting on Carolyn like he was memorizing the rhythm of the house. There was a focus in him, something old, something that didn't match his young age. The first time Emma noticed him, she was 7 months along, glowing with that unmistakable mix of nerves and joy. Carolyn was feeding Ranger by the window when Emma stepped inside. Immediately, Ranger perked up, his ears twitching. His eyes didn't just see her, they recognized her. "Oh, he's beautiful," Emma said, walking toward him slowly. "Mind if I say hello?" "Of course," Carolyn smiled. "He's a calm one." Emma knelt carefully beside him, hand resting on her belly for balance. Ranger stood, paused, and then took a step forward. Then, without hesitation, he lowered his head and pressed it gently against the curve of her stomach. His movements were delicate, reverent. A long, slow breath left his body as he stayed there, perfectly still. Emma gasped. "Oh," she just kicked, really hard. She let out a small, stunned laugh. She's never done that before. Carolyn, holding the empty bottle in her hands, just watched transfixed. A silence fell over the room, soft and sacred. Ranger didn't move, his ears relaxed, his nose gently twitching. He stayed there like he was listening, like he already knew. From that moment on, everything changed. Whenever Emma came over, Ranger was waiting by the door minutes before her car arrived. He never barked, never jumped. He would simply follow her calmly, keeping just enough distance, always close but never intrusive. He didn't act like a curious pup. He acted like a guardian. And when Emma rested, he would quietly settle beside her, his head near her belly, eyes half closed, breath syncing with hers. "You're already looking out for her, aren't you?" Emma would whisper, stroking the fur behind his ears. Carolyn watched it all unfold, silently amazed. In all her years around dogs and babies, she had never seen a connection so instant, or so deep. It was no longer just a rescue story. It was something else, a bond forming between a baby still in the womb and a dog who had somehow found her before she was even born. And though no one dared say it aloud, one question lingered in all their minds. What if he wasn't just rescued? What if he came to rescue her? The family talked. They thought about placing Ranger with a trusted friend, or enrolling him in therapy training, but none of those options felt right. Carolyn simply said, "He's already chosen us, and I think he's already chosen her." A vet and behaviorist confirmed it. Ranger's temperament was extraordinary. Calm, intuitive, 1 in a million. With a little help from trainers and the proper authorities, they decided Ranger would stay. He wasn't just a dog anymore. He was family. They made small changes to the house quiet spaces just for him. Soft zones, a fenced yard for gentle play. They prepared not just for the baby, but for a life shared between a girl and the dog who had already started loving her. When the day came, it was still snowing. Emma went into labor just before dawn. Her husband Jake got the car ready while Emma's mother grabbed the overnight bag. Ranger stood still at the window, his eyes fixed on the glowing red taillights disappearing into the swirling white. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He just watched. That whole day, Ranger barely moved. He circled a nursery, paused near Emma's coat, and lay silently by the door. He refused food. From time to time, he let out a low, mournful whine, like he knew something important was happening. Then, just after sunset, the phone rang. Lily. Grace Hayes had arrived. Healthy. Beautiful. The moment Carolyn hung up, Ranger turned and padded quietly into the nursery. He lay down by the crib, still empty, resting his head on his paws like he'd been waiting for her all along. 3 days later, the door opened. Emma stepped inside, Lily wrapped gently in her arms. Ranger was already there. He didn't rush. He approached with quiet reverence, pausing just in front of them. Then, with delicate grace, he lowered his head and touched his nose to the baby's tiny foot. A long breath escaped him, almost like relief that she was home. From that day forward, Ranger became more than a companion. He was Lily's silent shadow. When she napped, he curled nearby. When she stirred, he was alert before anyone else noticed. Sometimes he whined moments before she cried, as if he could feel her needs before they surfaced. As Lily grew, Ranger adapted. When she tried tummy time, he laid beside her, nose to nose. When she learned to crawl, he followed without crowding. Always patient. Always present. He wasn't trained for this. He just knew, and in the quiet moments, Carolyn would sit back and wonder, how did that little puppy end up under her cedar tree that morning? Maybe it wasn't chance at all. Maybe Ranger wasn't the one who was rescued. Maybe. He was the one sent to protect hers. He would wait completely still, watching her strain and wobble, his calm presence like an anchor. Then came the first rolls, then sitting, then the hesitant scoots across the carpet. Ranger adjusted his position each time, never overwhelming her, never in the way, always just close enough. If Lily reached too far and toppled, he'd shift his body slightly to cushion the fall or nudge a soft toy closer with his nose. But it was when Lily started pulling herself to her feet that something changed. One afternoon, as Carolyn folded laundry nearby, she watched Lily grab the edge of the couch, wobble certainly, and look toward Ranger. He was lying on the rug a few feet away. Slowly, she let go of the couch and took an unsteady step toward him. Arms stretched wide, face lit with determination. Ranger didn't move. Held his position, eyes locked on hers as if willing her forward. And when she stumbled, just before her knees buckled, Ranger rose slightly, stepped in, and caught her with the side of his body. Lily collapsed. Against him, giggling, face pressed into his fur. That day, Lily didn't just take her first step. She took it toward him, and he was ready. Some bonds don't need words. They grow in the quiet spaces between breaths, in the unspoken understanding presence. That's what Lily had with Ranger. Wherever she went, he was nearby, not leading, not following, just there, acquiescent witness to her world. He had come the rhythm beneath her every day, the soft thud of his paws, the rustle as shifted beside her playmat, the gentle sigh as he curled beside her crib for dawn. He was so constant, so seamlessly woven into the fabric off there. Life that no one imagined what it would feel like if he suddenly WSN single quotes to dot it happened on a Tuesday. Carolyn let him out just after breakfast, same always. The snow had melted into soft, wet earth, and Ranger liked to check Fetri line. But that morning, he didn't tread her. She called once, then twice, then every 5 minutes for the next hour. No sound, no flash of tan fur between trees, just wind and empty space. By noon, Emma and Jake were combing Feback Trail. By sunset, the entire family was searching the nearby fields with flashlights. It wasn't like him. He never wandered far, never without coming back. Inside the house, the silence thickened. Lily noticed first. She didn't cry. She just grew quiet. She stood by the glass door, one hand resting on the frame, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Ray, Ray," she asked once, and then again, softer. But no answer came. That night, Lily refused dinner, turned away from her favorite toys, and when Emma began to sing the lullaby that always calmed her, Lily shook her head. She pointed to the empty hallway and whispered, "Ray, Ray, come back," before turning her face to the wall and curling up in silence. By the next morning, the house felt colder, quieter. Reese's absence was not just physical, it was emotional. It was like someone had unplugged the hum that made the home feel whole. Even Jake, who had always been the rational one, couldn't hide fury etched into his silence. Then, just after noon, there was a scratching at the porch door. Carolyn opened it and gasped. Ranger stood there, soaked and muddy, his right front leg limp, ashalow cut trailing down his side. His ears drooped, one torn slightly at the edge. He looked exhausted, smaller somehow, but his eyes were steady, still golden, still clear. He limped forward one step and paused inside the living room. Lily froze, her breath caught. For a moment, she didn't move, just stared. Then without a word, she dropped the toy in her hand, stumbled to her feet, and ran, arms outstretched, eyes full of tears and joy, calling his name the way only she could. "Ray, Ray." Ranger lowered himself to the floor just as she reached him. She fell into his chest, small fingers grabbing his fur, forehead pressed to his neck. He didn't whine, didn't move. He just closed his eyes, leaned into her knee weight, and exhaled. After that day, nothing was ever quite the same, and somehow that felt right. Ranger healed slowly, his movements more careful, his energy tempered. But something in him had deepened. He was no longer just Lily's protector. He had proven without a doubt that he belonged to her. And Lily, she bloomed again. Her laughter returned, lighter, but somehow wiser, as if she now understood fat love could disappear for a moment. But true love always finds its way back. They still shared their days, reading picture books, napping side by side, inventing quiet games only they understood. Rur's fur remained her favorite pillow, his presence, her peace. The family never found out exactly where he went or why, but they stopped needing answers. Some things didn't require explanation. Some stories were better left as they were, wordless. Honest, Andriel. On her second birthday, as Lily toddled through the backyard, party balloons swaying in the breeze, Ranger followed close behind. Not guarding, not leading, just walking alongside her, step for step. And as Caroline watched it from the porch, she smiled softly and whispered to herself, he didn't need words to say it. He was home because she